Welcome to A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm your host, Eric P. Bishop. This is a place where interesting people come to talk about their creative outlets. As for myself, I'm an author, podcast host, travel enthusiast, and lover of the outdoors. If you'd like to learn more about my published works or adventures, go to my website, ericpbishop.com. I hope you enjoy the show, and please go out and support today's guest. Thanks, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. So tonight I am pleased to have Koon on the program. Hello, Gene.
Hi, thank you, Eric, for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. To tell everyone how I connected with you was I got a message one day from James Apt at Best Thriller Books, and he said, "Hey, if you're looking for a guest for your podcast, why don't you can I connect you with Gene?" And I was like, "Absolutely, you can connect me with Gene." So
Well,
we've
no,
had some emails, and now we're on
yeah,
a
no,
podcast.
James has been that his website is terrific,
Yeah.
and just best thrower books and had a couple of reviews from Steve Netter and
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Steve
Colonel
Thomas,
Steve.
and just it's my favorite website right now. So
Yeah.
I can't say enough about those guys.
Yeah, they do such a great service. As you know, with you've got your debut book out now, and just knowing the industry the way I do, that it's so hard for people to get their name out there, and
Yeah,
especially if you don't have like the backing of a major publisher. I mean, you can have a major publisher, but you might not have their backing. That's the one thing that I think if you don't know the industry, people don't realize is just because you get an agent, just because you get Simon and Schuster or whoever it doesn't mean they're going to throw the kitchen sink
no,
out there for you to get you all the attention you need. You might not have a publicist or a publicist that's
right.
doing a lot of things for you because you're not a revenue generating source for them yet.
Right.
So
Well, for me, it was I wrote this thriller and I thought, well, if I really want to test myself, I have to submit it to the guys who read more thrillers than, I mean, these guys are phenomenal readers.
yeah.
And so it was a test to me if I'm going to see how well I do. It's important to see, let me turn it in. They accepted
Hmm.
it. And now it's like, once I turned it in, it's like, oh no. And fortunately, it turned out okay. So,
Yeah.
but it's like I was like holding my breath there for a while. So, but no, I'm glad they liked it.
Yeah, no, yeah, great team. Kashif is the one. Once I give it to Kashif, and once I get the review back from Kashif with each book, I normally read his reviews, and I'm just like, man, he can write a review better than I can write a book, I think. So,
Well, not only do they make great reviews, they're so supportive. I had my a book signing a couple days ago,
mhm.
a couple days ago, and it turns out that Steve Netter lives in my hometown,
Yeah.
and I've never met him, but I wrote to him and I just said, would you mind coming? And
Hmm.
he showed up, and I actually had him come up, and he said a few words about the book, and just
Nice.
just a terrific group of guys over there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing I think probably the most surprising thing I learned after getting my foot in the door with writing was I didn't realize how supportive the community was.
Oh yeah.
I think coming from a business background, and I work for a good company, great people, but I think my thought was is it's going to be so competitive. You think of like sports and music and all the competitive acting, all the things out there that you hear all these horror stories of people just stabbing other,
Oh,
their competition in the back. And I figured, okay, I was kind of like getting ready for that thick skin moment of I better not trust any writers because they're probably going to screw me over. It was a complete opposite experience,
oh,
180 degrees opposite.
I agree. Every single author that I've met has been supportive,
Yeah.
and they take the time. And I remember I was in Amsterdam going to a book reading of an author named David Hewitt.
Okay.
He wrote a thriller, and they made a TV show. This is years ago.
Hmm.
And I met him outside. He was kind of walking in. He was a little early, and I was a little early to his book event. And he said, well, "Let's go grab a beer." Well, he never met me
Yeah.
before. And it's like, and we just talked books, and that's the kind of authors. They're just friendly. They're open. They're open for suggestions, and they really want. I think they want to read the next good read.
Yeah.
So, so
Absolutely. And even the higher up you go, you would think it wouldn't have that same experience. But now there's some of them, obviously, I've never met like James Patterson or John Grisham. There's some kind of that that echelon that's in like a different stratosphere, I guess you could say. But I think I know people that have met Brad Thor. I've met Brad Taylor, Jack Carr,
Wow.
Kyle Mills. Kyle Mills, I still message Kyle every so often on whatever, one of the apps. Not one of the social medias, not WhatsApp, one of those things. One of those ones.
Yeah, yeah.
But we go back and forth. And if I'm like, ask him a question or send him a new book cover, hey, what do you think of the new book cover? And you just
That's just great.
yeah, it's awesome to have that camaraderie. And I think part of it, I think I cracked the code years ago when I was like, why does it work this way? I think part of it is because a lot of professional things you get into, like maybe acting or sports, it's highly competitive and it's a young person's game in the
Mhm.
sense that if they start, maybe right after high school or whatever, they're jumping into this field and it's extremely competitive and it's how do you stand out better than the next one up there versus
Right.
writing by and far the majority of people that are writing books, this is like a second career for them when they get their foot in the door. It's not something they do when they're 18 or 19. I know there's exceptions, there's always exceptions, but the more writers you talk about, I'm one of them where it was my fourth book that got me a publishing contract, and I was 40, I don't know what it was, 44 years old, 45 years old at the time.
Well,
So
you're not 40 now. Come on.
I, I, I'm going to Australia, New Zealand next year to celebrate 50. I'll just say
Oh,
that.
well,
So
congratulations.
that's the plan at least. I need to sell more books, but
Congratulations.
thank you. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where I think that having that appreciate, and I think it helps you from a story. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, from just a storyteller's perspective. The more life experiences you have, I think the richer you can make your characters and the scenes and the plot and everything. With age, hopefully comes wisdom.
Yeah, well, knock on wood.
We can pretend at least.
Yeah, I'll pretend. How's that sound?
There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
Well, before we dive into the book, before we get in another try, and even I want to talk about, like I said offline, I want to talk about The Hague and the war
sure.
crimes, kind of that stuff. I know you got a good story for me, but let's go even further back. And when did that desire to write really begin for you? And then when did you start the process of actually going, okay, I got some ideas. Maybe I should put these down.
Well, I started in on the production side of television years ago,
Okay.
in my early 20s,
Okay.
and it was at a small market and where I got my start, and there you had to learn how to run a camera, the
Hmm.
sound work, learn how to direct, but you also went out and you made TV commercials, local TV commercials,
Okay.
and not only, I mean, just you had to go out and make several television commercials throughout the week.
Hmm.
So the experience of writing maybe 3 or 4 commercials a week and then bringing it back, shooting it and getting it up on the air, all for, I think, the price of like $50. They would sell them to, the local car commercials. Well,
Right.
they would make the commercials cheap, but then they would sell the airtime for more money.
Yeah.
But I got very quick in writing small commercials, 30
Okay.
second. And so there I got like, okay, this is kind of fun.
Hmm.
I learning how to write and at least in the short form. And so I kind of put that behind me. And then years later, it's like, you know, uh, writing a screenplay sounds like fun.
Hmm.
So probably like many other people, I went and picked up Sid Field's, how to write a screenplay or whatever that was called.
Hmm.
And that kind of showed me the structure of writing stories.
Right.
And and so I wrote a couple of screenplays, and they didn't go anywhere. And looking back, they weren't very good, but the idea I thought was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
So I kind of put that behind me. And um, but there was I had a family tragedy when I was younger, and I kind of held on to the story about that tragedy and reimagined it as sort of a fiction. And the
Hmm.
story wouldn't let me go, and the story wouldn't let me go. And finally, I just said, I told my wife one day, I'm going to write a book. And and
Sure
and
you are, Gene. Everyone says they're going to write a book.
but you see, and that's what made the difference was she was so supportive.
That's awesome.
She's just said, Sure you are, because she knew
Nice.
me what else I've done. So it wasn't surprising that I
Okay.
would make a remark. It's like, okay. And then once I put it out there, it's like, oh, I just said that. Now I better do it. Not only
Mhm.
I better do it, I have to do it because I told her I would do this.
Yes, exactly.
So I looked up online how to write a book. Well, you need, the margins and you need, the Romans time, whatever.
Right.
And and I started my first book. And I remember the day that I finished that book. I got up early in the morning and I went out and into the room and came back and I just said, "Honey, I finished my book." She said, "That's great." I went to work the next day and I thought, well, I better check the word count, and I looked up for mysteries and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Well, 80,000 words is recommended. Well, I had 60. So, honey, I'm not done with my book yet. So it was a learning experience, and from
Yeah,
there, I just I got hooked on writing. I
got hooked.
wanted,
Yeah.
and from there I got my first agent, or my agent, my one and only agent.
Hmm.
Uh, so it kind of worked. It's been with me ever since.
Well, that experience, once you get that first, I, my first one was the most dramatic, partially because it's the first one. Also, where I finished my first novel, which didn't get published. I might do something with it now that I own my own imprint. In a couple of years, I have some ideas, and it's going to need to be redone basically because I was a much weaker writer. Well, I won't say a terrible writer. I was much weaker back then in 2014. But I was on a business trip. My boss at the time was I working for him at the time? No, I was with a different same company, different boss, but my soon-to-be boss had me out at his office, and that's why he eventually pilfered me and stole me from my department. Um, but I was out in Yosemite I had one day in Yosemite. I had one day. I kind of built it into the trip because I think my manager at the time wouldn't have been too happy with me because it wasn't going to cost the company anything. I was paying for the gas and everything. I had to get the rental car back instead of bringing it back first thing in the morning. I scheduled a red-eye flight. So I went and got a hotel the night before, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe, yeah, hour and a half from Yosemite. Drove in early in the morning. Got on the road at like 5:30 in the morning. So I was like in the park at like 7 a.m. And I walked up to Lower Falls and the base of the falls and I started writing. And I had about two chapters left to write in my book. So I started working on those chapters until my battery in my computer died, pretty much. So then I went over to the cafe, plugged in, wrote some more, grabbed some food, and then ended up going back out and I finished my novel. I had to leave the park to catch the red eye at San Francisco. I had to leave at 6 p.m. That was my buffer zone. I finished at 5:30.
Oh,
I finished like 30 minutes to go, typed the end. I cried, I
oh,
screamed. I know exactly. I remember the picnic table. I've gone back to the picnic table I
yeah.
was sitting at.
It's a
Smoked
great
a cigar,
feeling.
which was highly
Yeah.
frowned upon. I made sure it was out before
Oh,
I think I might have taken the stub with me just to make sure I didn't start the big fire out there. But yeah, that feeling. And then I thought, okay, this is it. This is when it's all going to start. And absolutely, it didn't start. I got
oh,
rejection, and all that. And I knew what it became. I knew what it was then to become a writer.
oh, yeah, yeah. Well, with me, it's like when I finished my book, I thought it was great.
Hmm.
Well, I was pleased with it. And I showed it to, of course, the friends that would read it. And this was a time where I printed it up before Grammarly.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine at work, he took the red pen and, went through it and went through it. And he came back and just said, "Wow, I'm so glad that a friend of mine's book didn't suck." So so I thought, okay, maybe I have something here. But then I had to rewrite it. And
Yeah.
every time I did a rewrite, it seemed to improve my writing.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, every day, every time I sit down, I think it's improved because I'm learning different ways to approach it, with
Hmm.
sentence structure and how to make it faster. So
Well,
every
it's
time I
it's
go out,
it's a craft. It's a craft, and it's like with I know they do it for sports and for other things. It's you have to do like 10,000 hours of writing to
yeah,
really get at a good comfort level, and that number obviously fluctuates person versus person. I know that for writers, what I've heard is normally it's 1 million words. When you've written 1 million words, you're probably getting pretty good at it. And some people write 100,000 words and they're already really good. Other people have to write 5 million words before they're probably really ever good.
maybe that's why there's so few poets out there right now.
Could be. I have a friend actually coming out with a poetry book in April, so
Oh, that's great.
I'm looking forward to read it. I haven't read it. I actually saw the cover the other day. Yeah, he showed me the cover, which I thought was really cool. And that's kind of a thing that you don't see as much. Of course, even with writing, with novels, they're still selling really well and they're doing well. But the medium of entertainment
Oh,
and phones and all that has, in some ways, for part of the generation now, has killed
it
that
has.
that reading that used to be. I mean, that's all you had before net. Sorry, folks, before Netflix and all the other stuff. It just you didn't have those options available to you.
Well, we're finding out that we like to watch something on TV every now and then, and
Hmm.
but the options are getting, oh, we've seen this, oh, we've seen this, and it's so like, well, okay, maybe time to read the book tonight
Yeah.
or audiobook.
Or
So
audiobook, yeah. Yeah, so not promoting this at all. It's actually I listened to the audiobook. I had a 10-hour car ride the other day and let's see if the
okay.
light's bad. So I
Oh, Arnold, okay.
Arnold, yeah, be useful. So I even it was so good listening to it that I picked up the hard copy and it just came today from Amazon because I'm gonna go back through it, I think, with a highlighter because there's so many things in there that I didn't know what to expect. I was
Uh,
excited to hear that, the reason I got the audiobook was I heard his voice can definitely grind on people, or they can be like, I love that accent. For me, I'm on the part of I love hearing him say something because
oh,
it like stands out so well because of
yeah,
his thick accent. But there were so many nuggets in that book that I think anyone, whether they're a writer or a musician or a plumber, doesn't matter what. And he actually that's one of the things he mentions is right now he uses some strong words about it of like we've kind of force fed to our society of you have to go get a college education if you want to have a good life, if you want to buy a house, you better get a 4-year education. No, we're at the spot now where do you need a 4-year education for some
right.
jobs? Absolutely. But the next millionaires in the next 20 years, they're going to be plumbers, electricians. They're going to be basically the trade people that most people don't want to go, be a plumber. They don't want to go be an electrician or build a house. It's like, yeah, but those are going to be the people that can charge $200, $300 an hour versus
Absolutely.
you going working at whatever ABC company and making $50 an hour and thinking, "Oh, I'm going to have a good life." No, the electrician's the one with the boat and the beach house and all that because there's so few people wanting to do those jobs that they can charge what they want and they have all time, full-time job all the time.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's and AI is going to be a presence. So yeah,
Yes.
we're in a new frontier. So it's exciting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. There's a thing too that just came out. I saw it in a while back, but a lot of authors have been posting about it. And I finally went to the link. I think The Atlantic or someone has a database of Facebook Meta went in and got probably million, I don't know how many, maybe millions, whatever it is. They've got all these books to train their AI system
Oh,
and
okay.
basically took authors' books. Every single one of my books are in the database. Brad Thor,
Right.
all his books are there. One big name author after another has been posting on social media saying, "Yeah, they got my books too." And it's like, well, that's our copyrighted intellectual property, and did they go buy copies? Did they buy audiobooks and download those? And I don't know the specifics, but
Yeah.
no one gave me $50 million for my rights. So, come on,
Well, yeah,
come
right.
on, guys.
Yeah. Well, it checks in the mail. So
I'm sure Zuckerberg's working
yeah,
on it
right.
in his Hawaii bunker right now, signing it. Yes.
Yeah. He's watching this interview and he's going, "Oh, Eric, I forgot him. Okay, we'll get that out right now."
The body man was so good, I should stroke him
Yeah.
a big old check. And it's like, just get me a Netflix or Prime deal. That's all,
There you
I'll
go.
make some
Yeah.
calls.
There you go.
I'm still waiting for mine. So no, I love I love how you told your wife you're going to do it. I love that she was supportive. And I
Oh,
know I
absolutely.
have friends on both sides. I have friends that their spouses are super supportive of
Yeah.
them being writers, and then I have other friends that have or acquaintances in the business that have told me their spouses have never read their books. Like, which I'm like, wow, now that's kind of crazy. You would think if anyone would read it, your wife or your husband would read the book.
Yeah, I mentioned her, in the back of the book, in the acknowledgments because saying that she probably knows the book better than I do
Hmm.
because I would come out and I'd have my coffee, and work on it. And then she'd come out. And of course, I'm dying to tell her what I just, wrote, and
Absolutely.
it's like, and she had the patience to bear with me,
Hmm.
of course, and so yeah, she was just terrific.
No, that's great. The support system is a big deal because a lot of times, especially for writers, and I'm sure probably a lot of other creative types, musicians, whatever, it's not that their spouse isn't supportive, but it's generally speaking, a lot of times people in their family might not have that same creative outlet, and so they don't really understand it.
Yeah.
I started writing in college. I started actually poetry. We were talking about poems
Oh,
earlier. Horrific things. I went back and read them several years ago, and it's a good thing I didn't try to publish a poetry book because I wouldn't have made 2 cents off these things, but it got that creative flow started. And then I was writing with my first corporate job, and I was doing it in my free time, wasn't doing it while I was working. And I had a manager that like gave me, I remember I was working in Greenville, South Carolina, and our company had acquired a company out in St. Louis. And I was part of the team that our job was to go out to not move, but go out to St. Louis for a couple months, come home just a couple weekends every so often and basically just learn the job to bring it back to Greenville. And my boss gave me grief for like writing novels in the evenings or whatever with my free time and like was nasty about it too, which
yeah.
needless to say, within 6 months, I gave a 2 week notice and told her I was moving to Colorado. And she's like, I think you knew you were moving to Colorado before 2 weeks. I
Oh,
was like, you got your 2 weeks notice, lady. And I was like,
yeah.
see ya. Never talked to her again. But was like, downing the fact that I was doing this creative outlet at the time. And I thought, man, if anything, I don't think she's connecting with the dots of that's going to help me with my job. That's going to help me in other things because I'm actually kind of expanding my mind. And that's what I found as I've been doing this is you do get those elements around you that are kind of like, man, why are you wasting your time? And it's like, I'm not wasting. If I was sitting here watching Netflix every night or watching the Atlanta Braves every game, and that to me as a creative person, that might be a waste because I have a talent, hopefully, in what I'm doing, or at least an interest in what I'm doing, and I'm pursuing it.
Well, for me, getting back to my first book, and it gets on to this book, Another Try, is I didn't have a choice. I had this story,
Hmm.
I had an idea in my head, and I knew the ending,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how I was going to get there. So
Right.
I was more, and I had no choice but to write these books,
Hmm.
uh, because I was interested. So for me, I don't, even if it wasn't going to be published, or I just had to pursue this, and
Yeah.
hopefully other people will like it as well. But I had to do it for
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that, and that's the common thread. Same exact thing for me. I mentioned it on a recent podcast, actually. The first editor for the Body Man, I hired a professional editor before it even went to the publisher or whatever. Before when I was trying to shop it around, I said, "Well, let me get the best." I was getting rejected so much for the first 3 books. I was like, maybe I just should get a book completely polished as best as possible, even pay the money for an editor up front, and then hopefully with the Body Man, hopefully I can then sell that by doing that. And the editor I hired was actually a guy that was an author friend of mine who was extremely successful. He got me in touch with an editor he knew. And the editor was out in Hawaii. And editor's first and only question really to me was, if I tell you right now, after I read the book, that it's not good enough to be published, will you ever write another book? And I said to him, I was like, this is what I'll do the rest of my life. Will I ever make money doing this? I can't tell you that. But I will tell you that this is why I was put on planet Earth. I'm supposed to tell stories.
yeah.
Even if I'm the only one that ever gets joy out of it, even if I'm the only one that ever reads it cover to cover, this is why I'm here and I have to do it. And he was like, okay, I'll work with you then. So,
Well, I've got to tell you my story with an editor. So I mentioned this maybe earlier, where I wrote the book and I'm really proud of it,
mhm,
and I showed it to the friends, and but once again, I like to test myself, and like giving it to the reviewers, and with Another Try, I thought I really have something here. I enjoy it. So, but if I'm going to really take it, do this properly, I'm going to give it. I'm going to ask for an editor to look at it.
mhm,
And so I contacted an editor, Anne, and she came back and she assessed it first, and she said that it's not quite dialed in.
hmm,
And of course, it's like, oh, what?
yeah,
I really worked hard on this, which doesn't matter if you work hard on it or
Right.
not. If it's not good, it's not good
Yeah.
or good enough. And but she came back and said, but you've got something there. Don't give up.
Hmm.
Okay, now coming from a professional, someone who this is what she does and she's talented, I mean, beyond talented.
Hmm.
Uh, and to have her say that, it's like, okay, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I'm going to rewrite it and I'm rewrite it. And then at some point she said, now you got it. Now this is something I can work with.
Hmm.
And then she formed it into, what it is and and she's still she is so supportive.
Yeah.
It just yeah, but in the beginning it's like, okay, it's good to be told the truth. It
Yes.
hurts a little bit, but you know what? I can see the progression from then to where it is now,
Yeah.
and it's a much faster book. And she just took out a lot of the stuff that wasn't needed,
Hmm.
and I think she said something that was really important, which is don't get married to your work.
Hmm.
And what she meant by that is I might like the poem that I have in the book because I think I might have it was in this one or the other one. But if it slows down the book, you got to take it out.
Got to take it out. Yeah.
So if I have a nice line or someone says this or an action, it's like don't get married to it. If it doesn't if it's slowing the pace down, time to eject it.
Yep.
So
It's
so
that famous statement. Sometimes you have to kill your darlings.
right, I think
Um,
that's what she meant. Yeah.
Yeah, which is true. I'm finishing up an edit. I'll finish it tonight. Actually, I was supposed to finish it last night, and I just got tired. I did some volunteer work up at National Forest, and I'm getting older than I realized. I'm sore, and so I sat on the back deck and edited for a while. But I'm 30 pages short, so I'll finish this evening after we
But
record this.
Eric, you're not even 50 yet.
What's that?
You're not even 50 yet.
I
You're
know.
not.
Well, and I'm fairly active too, but we were digging ditches and trenches for
Okay.
the Park Service. So I was thinking this was like go on a trail and I use trails a lot, so I wanted to help give back. I figured it was pick up sticks and move stuff. When they started handing out pickaxes and shovels, I was like, what the heck did I sign up for here?
Yeah.
So I'm good.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
but I just said I need a good night's sleep after that one. But yeah, so 30 pages short, and I'm in that
Oh,
spot where I've had to kill one of my darlings.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Kill a big character, which is not something I've done in this series too often, put it that way. Um, that's a tough one, but I needed that to happen. I needed it for the dramatic effect and what it's going to cause to happen in future books. And yeah, don't be married to anything. And that's kind of like for me, why I created the Body Man character, which is a role.
Uh-huh.
My thought with doing that, because my first three books were not anything like that. They were protagonist. He's the American hero. He's the good guy. He's gonna be the next Mitch Rapp or fill in the blank Scott Harveth. He's gonna carry a series. And I realized as I continued to read those series over the years, I knew what was going to happen. Like, if you start a book and Mitch Rapp's in chapter one, well, Mitch Rapp's going to end the book. He might get banged up and beat up,
Yeah.
but they got a contract. This is a moneymaker. So I was like, I want to start a series that involves a role, and at some point, I can kill that person in that role and have someone else step in. So that's kind of why I created the Body Man role. And my current Body Man is Nick Jordan, but Nick doesn't necessarily gonna ride off in the sunset. He's three books in. We'll
Yeah.
see if he makes book four, book five, book six. I like that idea of you can, as long as you do it the right way, you can kind of interchange, and I think it gives you more creative freedom versus if you're writing a series that's only based on this one character, and there's obviously side characters
Oh
that
yeah.
that that limits your world. And Brad Taylor actually had told me that years ago. One of the times I was talking to him, and we were just kind of he was one of those people that was super supportive. And when I'd meet up with him in New York or go down to Charleston, he was always willing to kind of give me the 2 cents. And he said, "Man, as soon as you start writing something, you close your world in. And if you make the character 6 foot tall, well, that's his permanent height. If he's got blue eyes, he's got blue eyes. So you constrict your world every time you write a new scene." So you can write yourself into a very small box if you're not careful as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But as far as killing characters, I'm really kind of in deep with the Slow Horses series now,
Okay.
with Mick Aaron, and he has a way of killing off some of his you know characters,
Yeah.
and no one's safe, and I like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it keeps readers on their toes. And again, it's not a knock at the writers out there that go write a series with 30 books with the one character. I can get I get that, and I've enjoyed reading those over the years. I like the idea now that I'm writing of having that flexibility of, and I'm also trying to create like a universe. Like I've got two series and they interconnect in some small degree, and they might interconnect a lot more in another couple books because I like having that spider web of, oh, this person knows that person, or this person has to hire this one as well, but he also works with this one, with her. So yeah. Well, hey, before we dive into another try,
Sure.
let's talk about how did you get to the Netherlands and The Hague,
Uh,
and how did you
well,
try war criminals? I want to know what's going on here, Gene.
like I said, I got an early start in broadcast television,
Yeah.
doing everything from sound work, some documentaries, directed the local news, small
Okay.
market. And you make this progression and you learn how to uh, directing. Uh, I just really love directing live television.
hmm
Uh, you just don't know what's going to
I was just
happen.
like, keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it keeps you on your toes. Not just what's happening. What's uh, in on stage or in the studio or in this case in the courtroom.
hmm
Uh, but it's every time it's almost like a baseball game or a football game. You don't know who's going to win.
hmm
Is it a technical problem or can you capture the moment? And so I just really enjoy directing.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Frank, he went over to The Hague first,
Okay.
and it's the International Criminal Court for the former Yugoslavia is where I work. It's a United Nations uh, courtroom.
hmm
Uh, and he just said you'd be great at this. And so I went over there, and uh, the first trial uh, at the time that I started to learn how to direct was uh, let's see, what's what I can't remember who it was, but I ended up directing a little bit of the Milosevic trial.
Okay.
Now, President Milosevic, he
Yep.
ended up dying while I was there, and
Right.
that was interesting set of circumstances. And But that's how I got over there was through a friend because he recognized that I would really enjoy this.
hmm
And once I got in there, I studied the other directors because there was three courtrooms at the time and
Okay.
two trials a day, one in the afternoon and one in the evening, because
Wow.
there was a few war criminals that were in the docket. And
Yeah.
um, so I just started learning, studying, and trying to put myself in the position. I was trying to, what's important? What's important to capture in the courtroom?
hmm
Now, when I was directing, like I said, it was live television, and it was, it was sent out to over 30 different countries, and who knows how many viewers there
Yeah.
were. But during the judgments, it could get into the millions.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure.
Um, and because of the nature of the witnesses and protected witnesses, because if you reveal someone's identity, it's not a good situation.
Right.
So the way it worked was the directors would do everything. So we would be right next to the courtroom with a glass looking into the courtroom so we could see the
Okay.
judges, could see us, everybody could see us. The accused would come in and literally sit down within a couple feet from you with
hmm
the glass. They would nod, but we would also run cameras as well. So we had six cameras, and
Okay. Wow.
we were a one-man band because, like I said, the nature of the beast
hmm
of private and closed session, uh, redacted documents, that sort of
Sure.
thing. So I got into it that way, and what my style was because this was for the Bosnians, the Serbians,
hmm
Croatians, and a lot of the victims, it's not like everyone has their own background, but everybody was affected.
hmm
So I needed to tell the story for people who did not have, who were not lawyers, who were not judges.
Right.
I didn't know anything about law when I first started. And I figured I'm going to I'm going to direct from like if I'm sitting down watching the courtroom, if I was one of the victims' families.
Hmm.
So I would direct like showing reactions.
Hmm.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. So if
Hmm.
you don't know what, a tier 92 is or this or that, you're going to know if an accused or the prosecutor gives you a look of confusion or
Right.
shakes his head or this isn't right. And so I really wanted to tell the story for the victims.
Hmm.
Going forward, that's what I did. And
Wow.
hopefully I did okay. And I ended up doing, I was there I was there for over 10 years. And
Wow. Okay.
yeah, I actually directed the Radovan Karadzic judgment, which the UN, I heard the UN said that was the most uh, a significant judgment since Nuremberg
Hmm.
for political judgment.
Hmm.
And I mentioned to you that I did something else on my last assignment
Hmm.
before leaving The Hague. Um, we had the Perlich judgment, and there was six accused, and this was on live television broadcasting throughout 30 some odd different countries, like I was saying, and
Hmm.
they're lined up, like I said, just 2 feet from me. There's just a window, and I'm looking at them. And the first accused stands up, Perlich, and he was sentenced to 20 some odd years. And we move on to the next one, and 20 some odd years. And the third accused stands up, and he's being sentenced, and 20 some odd years. And they'd already been in the detention center for quite some time, for
Hmm.
years. Uh, and he said something to the judge in Croatian, and he took out a vial and he drank the vial, which I thought was maybe rakia or bourbon, and said something to the judges, yelling something to the judges. And he sat back down, and I went on to the next one. Um, and off camera, he said something again, which I didn't understand because it was in Croatian.
Hmm.
Uh, and his lawyer said, my client just said he took poison.
Poison. Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
which was the case. And you might have seen or heard about it in the news a few years back.
If I did, I don't remember, but just the way you were explaining it, I'm like, yeah, that had to have been something very bad he took. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a General Prolog. And,
Okay.
so that made for an interesting session for
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
last assignment before leaving The Hague.
So you actually, so you spent 10 years like living there in the Netherlands, basically.
Yeah, it was about, I think maybe 13 years in total.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a great experience, though.
Yeah.
I was able to make friends with the greatest lawyers, international lawyers, and judges. You would hear stories from, these lawyers. They worked on the prosecuting for the Exxon Valdez,
Hmm.
Rodney King, Timothy McVeigh,
Yeah.
and on and on. That set up the courtroom for Saddam Hussein, and I get to ask questions to these guys.
Yeah.
It was for a guy who likes history. It was perfect for me.
I had a buddy, speaking of Saddam, so I had a buddy that was in the military and they ran security for the compound or where Saddam was held before they executed him.
Yes.
Um, and he's out of the military now, so I can say this. Um, we're going through some photos later on, years later, and get to this one photo, and there's a rope. And it
Uh,
dawned on me what it was. And I was like, is that what I think it is? And he's like, yes. And I was like, wow. And they actually went in there after the execution and everything. And the Iraqis did it all, but it was all done, with our blessing and our security and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
wild.
Want to stay away from war crimes, that's for sure. So
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't seem to learn our lessons as human beings. So much of this, like, if anyone, I have a history minor, so I have a finance major, bachelor's in finance, but I have a history minor, and I don't believe I'm very good at it most of the time, but I always try to read and study. And people just tend to not acknowledge or not accept the fact that so many things that happen are cyclical. And it's like we don't learn the mistakes from our past. We repeat them. There's a famous quote about that too, and it's totally true. Of you see something that happens, it's like, okay, we've learned, with what happened in Nazi Germany, we've learned our lesson. That's never gonna be allowed again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still genocide that happens around the world now, all these years later.
Right, right. I also worked on the General Mladic trial, and he was known for and the extinction of 8,000 men and boys in a few days,
Yeah.
and these are the stories that a lot of people over here haven't really uh, understood, or at least got. It's not a subject that a lot of people talk about over here, but over in
Right.
Europe, it's a pretty big deal.
It's a bit,
Um,
yeah.
it's a very big deal, and the other thing is um, uh, war is not like what you see in the movies. It's a
Hmm.
whole lot worse, and you don't really want to know. You really just don't want to know the horrors that come from war.
Yeah.
Uh, you're, seeing the victims come in, and it's just, yeah, it's a horrible situation.
We've seen it in a different light, I think, in the past like 50 years, and especially now in the last 20, because our country coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq, we had a prolonged, and me having friends that served over there, and there's a lot of writers I've met that were active duty and were deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan in that age of technology where you've got videos and photos and all the other stuff, and like the GoPros that people have now with what's going on in Ukraine, where you're
Yeah,
seeing this stuff in real time, that it's just, and again, that's just the video image. You're not the one, getting in a room with an RPG, or that the building's getting dropped or anything like that. You're just seeing videos of it, but it's remarkable what humanity does to itself. The other thing I thought about when you mentioned that, and not making light of it in any way, but Gene Hackman died
yes,
recently, him and his wife, and great actor. I know he's been retired for 15, 20 years now. But one of the movies he did, one of his last movies, last 10 years or so, was Behind Enemy Lines, him and Owen Wilson,
oh
where
yeah,
they're in that area and they're talking and they're seeing the graves. And that's made me think of it when you mentioned that. Again, a very fictionalized version.
yeah. They were that was in Bosnia or Croatia, as I recall that
Yeah, I
movie.
think it was. Yeah, it might have been. I think it was Bosnia, I believe so. But them coming across and fall on one of the guys, I think Owen Wilson's character, when he's trying to run away from the soldiers that are chasing him, he actually falls into the pit of bodies, and just they don't catch him because I think if I recall the image, I haven't seen the movie in a few years. I showed it to my son a couple years ago, but they've got the thermal imaging above him, and they see him there, and they see the soldiers coming around him, and they're not doing anything to him, and they're like, "What's going on?" Well, then they show this action scene of what's happening. Well, he's in the muck there in between these dead bodies, and that's why that he just looks like he's one of the corpses. And it's just, yeah, again, it's another reminder of just how bad one person can be to another person.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it's just the effect that it has on families.
Yeah.
That's it's not just like in the movies where bang, and the guy falls down, but it just goes far out. And I just feel so bad for all the families involved, from and all of with everybody over involved in that situation.
Hmm.
So
Well, and I'm sure those families were there, and that you're experiencing them in the trials and them coming and listening to these things, and it's post-traumatic stress. You're living it for years after the fact of it having to
absolutely.
be brought back up.
I think about the trials every day.
Yeah.
So it's with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the friends, and I've made a lot of friends that were from the region, and heard their stories as well. And it's just and the way they cope with it now is just astounding, because so many people are positive to this day,
Hmm.
and just and they've moved on the best they could, and it's
Right.
just it's really something to see.
Do you think in some ways maybe writing is a form of therapy for you, for just the going through having that kind of a career and what you kind of listened and heard?
I don't know if that's related, but I will say that the next Garris Kelly book may have something more to do with
Hmm.
uh, that topic.
Okay. I'll have to have you back to talk
What's
about
some
that one.
plans? Yeah,
Well, that's the power of books. They can in one way can be used to transport people, and kind of get you out of away from your just everyday life. I think a lot of reading is that it's just a way of de-stressing yourself and putting yourself in a different situation. You're not thinking about your problems. You're reading about someone else's problems sometimes,
Right.
that kind of stuff. But from a writer's perspective, in a way, and I jokingly call it therapy, but I think it is for us writers. It's a way, especially like you said, you had that story in you and you had to get it out. And that's one of the universal things when you talk to writers is they all kind of have that same baseline story of, look, these ideas and these wild things that come out of my keyboard or my hand to my pen, it's something inside me that has to come out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and the fun for me is when the characters start talking. You know, and where did that come from?
Yeah.
Where I would never say something like that, and I've never said it. And but they start talking and you just see what they're doing and just, it's fun to follow them.
Yes. And that's a good thing about editing. So I'm like I said, I'm in the I'll finish up another edit tonight, and I'll probably have another one to go through before the final edit gets it. That's due on April 25th. So I got
Wow.
4 more weeks to kind of knock out the final edit and have a couple other people look at it and make sure most of my craziness is makes sense to them. But it's funny when you go back and read it and you're like, that felt good to write, but maybe I should take that line out.
Yeah. Well, I was really fortunate that once we went forward with the book, my agent came to me and said, "Have you thought about the audiobook,
Hmm.
doing an audiobook?" And
Hmm.
yeah, I have, but then I kind of forgot about it,
Yeah.
and then we started talking about it, and within a week, maybe just about a week or a little over a week, she came back and with there's some interest.
Okay.
And okay, this is great. And well, if we can do this, can we get narrator Richard Poe, who it's my son's favorite.
Hmm.
He um, and so we worked on that, and I ended up getting Richard Poe
Wow.
narrate my audiobook, and
Hmm.
he takes it to a different level. Now,
Yeah.
if you're not familiar with Richard Poe, he did a lot of Elmore Leonard books.
Hmm.
Did Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, which is amazing. And he won the award for Steinbeck's East of Eden,
Okay.
but and Dan Brown's Angels and Demons.
Hmm.
But he took this, this action book of mine, and he acted the characters.
Right.
And it's like he didn't read it. He performed it.
Hmm.
And it's just so much fun for me to listen to. And it's like, okay, did I write that? Because it sounds like this guy. Anyway, so that was just a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's a great medium to have for people, and it opens up another audience too because there's so many people that don't want to take the time to
Mhm.
sit down, read a book, but they're in the car. Like I mentioned, I went through Arnold's book. I was in the car for 10 hours on Friday. I was up for a friend's father who passed away, so we're up at his funeral up in Raleigh. I didn't want to drive my car. My car's got a lot of miles. I'm looking to replace it, but maybe I'm good for another month. I keep dragging my feet going, no car payment's kind of nice. So
Yeah.
we'll just keep letting let it ride until I probably am stuck and I have to go buy one. So I went and got a rental car. Well, the rental car place is an hour from me, that where I normally get it, and it's good and good price. So it was an hour there, then 4 hours to the funeral, 4 hours back to the rental car place. This is all the same day, and an hour back to my house. So it was like 10 hours. And as I was leaving that morning, I pulled up my Audible and I was like, what am I listening to for the next 6 to 10 hours?
Yeah. Well, for me, like I said, I'm doing the Mick Herron series now, and when I'm working out in the yard or the gym or something, it's nice to, I just plug in and just
Yeah.
listen to their stories. And I never really did books too much until Richard Poe did mine. This is kind of fun,
Yeah.
so now I'm doing a mixture of both. So
Especially if you get a good one. But my first foray into it several years ago was I had my kids started going through the Harry Potter books, but they didn't read them. They got the audiobooks, and Jim Dale does
right, right,
does the reading for it. And so my kids were like, "Dad, you read Harry Potter?" And I've seen the movies and taken them to the movies. I'm like, "No, I have not read the books. It's on the list, but I just don't have time." And they're like, get the audiobooks. So I had an office at the time up in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and I had a library a block and a half from my office. So I would go down and just get the audiobooks, and I went through all what seven, 8 books. I think it's seven. I went through all 7 books in, probably 6 months, whatever it was, fairly quick time period, but they were like, again, like you were talking, it was immersive. It wasn't a reading, it was a performance, basically, is what it was.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. I just love that when it's a performance.
Yeah.
And just, I've got some baddies in my book, and they're just it's fun to hear him do.
Hmm.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, especially someone's take on something because the it's in your head and you type it out, so you at least in your head hear it a certain way. So to have someone come in and actually put a voice to it has got to be pretty powerful.
Yeah. Well, he really took the essence of what I was going for and then like took it to the next level. So
That's
it just
awesome.
yeah. So, thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. So, well, hey, let's talk about another try. So, I know you said you're not good at the elevator pitches, but the
No.
gist, what's happening in this story?
Well, I'll tell you about the character first, who I can't wait to see what he does in the future. His
Even
name is
you don't know. See, that's the amazing part.
well, that's the thing. He's a guy you just don't know about because he's his name is Garris Kelly, and they say he's a CIA operative.
Okay.
And but he's not going to confirm or deny that. And it's the president that announced on social media that Garris was a operative.
Right.
He sort of let it slide because he heard that Garris took out a drug cartel kingpin and 12 of his guys. And the president, thinking he's kind of a maverick guy, kind of saw something in Garris and invited
Hmm.
him to the White House for dinner. But Garris had different plans. He thought it would be a better idea just to go to a local minor league baseball game, the Hillsborough Hops.
Okay.
And the president thought that might have been a snub, and kind of just let it slide that Garris was the guy to take out the drug kingpin.
Hmm.
And so that's Garris. And the book starts off with Senator Frank Beamer on his way to a campaign trail or a campaign rally in
Hmm.
Portland, Pioneer Square. And he's taking the Max, which is a transit train. And and he's on there with his campaign manager, his son, Lawrence. And uh, somewhere between the journey, a man dressed like a homeless person gets on, and there's a random mass shooting.
Hmm.
On and the senator is okay, but his son, Lawrence, takes a slug in the neck.
Hmm.
Uh, he didn't die, but he's severely injured.
Hmm.
And the Max driver manages to get the train to the Pioneer Square, where Garris happens to be there because he was going to have a meeting with Frank Beamer after the rally because he really believed Frank Beamer was the one who gave the president the information that he was the guy who gave him the name and
That kind of outed him, basically.
out of him, right?
Yeah.
So Garris, being capable as he is, whisks the Beamer to the hotel next door, across the street from where the Max is stuck. And while he's running around, then once he gets the senator to the footsteps and leaves him with the doorman, he goes out and looks in the square to see if the shooter is still there.
Hmm.
The shooter, homeless guy, who wasn't a homeless guy, he is now in the hotel himself, looking down at the chaos in the square.
Hmm.
And he sees Garris. He recognizes Garris because maybe they have worked in the past,
Hmm.
maybe. And the Max shooting was just one piece of the master plan.
Hmm.
And he sees that Garris is there now and says, I think I might be able to use this guy. And however, he's got to get out of town pretty quickly, him and his crew. So he
Hmm.
leaves Garris maybe a little hint to come and find him.
Okay.
And so Garris finds a hint and is intrigued and travels to Eastern Oregon in search of who may have shot up Lawrence Beamer and the train and the
Mhm.
story kind of that's the starting point for the story.
Yeah,
And
we don't want to give away too much. So
okay, just one more piece. No, there's plenty. There's a surprise on every
that's
two
just the start. I love it.
start. But what also happens is now that this is in the news because he just saved the president or Senator Beamer,
Hmm.
he's been outed. He's a celebrity, a pseudo celebrity
Right.
because now, I mean, can you imagine like a James Bond character you walks into your grocery store and you go, "You're the guy in the news."
Yeah.
Now Garrus has to deal with that. But also, since it's in the news of the shooting and Garris's identity, well, the drug cartel guys, the cartel see knows where Garris is at,
Right.
and they're sending a crew to Portland to follow Garris and to
Hmm.
so there's just sort of like one step getting closer and closer to Garris while he's trying to do this other thing on the side. So that's basically the setup for
Awesome.
another.
Yeah, that's the other problem with our technologies now is anonymity, man. Whether you're good, bad, or indifferent, there's not much anonymity in life. It's hard to not be if you don't want to be found out. I got accused of that a lot over the years because people be like, "Man, if anyone wants to find you, you're on social media and you post what you're doing." I'm like, "Yeah, unfortunately, yes. If I really do work for the CIA and I really do have a hand in taking down, El Chapo or a drug cartel, they could get me pretty. Fortunately, I don't because they could get me really easily with social media posts.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's just, I wanted to write a book that was kind of reminiscent of the popcorn action movies, from the
Hmm.
80s, 90s. So the book I wanted to write is you switch off and you go.
Yeah.
I used to go to a lot of action movies with my son,
Hmm.
and like once a week we would go, to Arnold's movies or
Yeah.
Stallone and now I can almost see, Jason Statham,
Jay
just
Statham. Yeah, he's got one coming out here uh this month, I think, new one.
yeah, so I just want to click off and go. I want to, fast-paced
Yeah.
book. Don't read too much into it, but just enjoy your time, and you're going to be surprised every couple pages. There's going to be something said or a red herring or a real clue, but it's going to something I put in maybe on the first or third page is going to have a big effect on, down the road. And so you have to read it very, very carefully if you're going to get the
Right.
insight. So I've laid that all in for basically to have a good time. It's
To have a
all
good
in.
time.
That's all I wanted to do is
Yeah.
is
Yeah, that's the again the purpose, especially if you're writing fiction, the purpose of it is to entertain people. I've had that struggle with myself, and I've had some Secret Service agents read my book and compliment, not because I haven't liked in a way them getting their hands on it because I have zero Secret Service experience. Yes, I've read books, I've researched, I've been to the White House, I've done other things, so I feel comfortable talking about some minor details. But at the end of the day, I'm making up a lot of stuff. And I know I'm making up a lot of stuff. And I always wait when the next book comes out to get some nasty gram from someone saying, that's not what would happen. And I won't reply. I wouldn't go, well, whatever. But in the end of the day, it's fiction. And
it's
I don't
fiction.
care if that's what would happen. In my head, it made for a good story. That's
Right.
why I did it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wanted to write a beach book, where you pick it up at the airport, you
Yep.
read it on the plane, you leave it for the next guy,
Yep.
and wow, okay, I just killed a few hours, and this is more power to you.
Right. I love it. So can we expect you've hinted at it already, so I guess we can expect to see Garrus back future books?
Yes, I'm working on the next one, and
Okay.
I've got some interesting. I'm going to bring a couple of characters back.
Nice.
One of them, I'll just tell you right now, is because he's just one of my new favorite characters. Is in the book. It's General McCoy.
Okay.
It's loosely based on a guy I know who has written a terrific autobiography. It's called Hangar Flying,
Hmm.
and he is a former chief of staff of the Air Force, General Merrill McPeak.
Okay.
who was also a Thunderbird pilot,
Hmm.
soloist, the first Thunderbird soloist to actually eject during a performance. So, and he's got so many stories,
Oh yeah.
and he is the ultimate warrior. He is the ultimate gentleman. He is like Elmore Leonard and Luke Skywalker and everything rolled into one. And it's like, I can have some fun with this character
Yeah.
and I can have fun with these two guys going, being buddies together.
Yeah.
So, so maybe we're going to have a buddy book coming up.
Love it. So I love in your biography or your write-up, it says, you lived in Oregon and you balance your love of airplanes, wine, coffee, and riding your Dutch bike.
Dutch
So
style.
we can't end this without discussing
Yes.
what what is a Dutch bike? An actual bicycle?
My God. It's a bicycle. Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
I haven't been to the Netherlands yet. It's on my
okay.
list, hopefully next couple of
Well,
years, but I know
it's
there's a
not.
lot of bikes there.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of bikes there. And my Dutch bike is the kind where you're sitting straight up. It's almost like, when you see the woman in Wizard of Oz, how she's standing up in the totem
Yes.
back. You're upright. You're not down low. You don't have the super cool helmet on or anything. It's just like it's got the chrome rims and it's
Hmm.
the leather saddle and it's just my style. It's a lot of fun.
Love
And
it.
when I was in The Hague for the 13 years, yeah, we didn't have a car.
Yeah.
We went by bike and by train
Mhm.
everywhere. Just love the my bike.
Yeah, the transportation system. So you had mentioned, we had talked off camera, you'd said you'd got the body man. And if you enjoy it and you end up going breach of trust, there's a scene that takes place through Amsterdam. And there
Oh,
is a
wow.
scene in there that involves a bike and a few things. So I did my research on how things worked, but I haven't been there. But the transportation, I was over in Europe. I was in the UK back in November. And just, yeah, it's so, flew into London, took a train up to Edinburgh, flew over to Dublin, bus ride down to Cork. So the transportation stuff, it's hard. It's hard in the United States because we are in a way a big country, very spread out, and it's not extremely reliable to get on a train and go across the country,
Right,
depending on
right.
where you want to go and time frame and all that. But yeah, you get into a small country in Europe and the rail pass is the way to go. I mean, you can see the whole
The way.
country.
No, we've traveled all over Europe, while we were there, and just there's just something about our experience of living in The Hague, which is, The Hague is, if you've never been there, you got to go. It's just one of the most enchanting cities ever. It's where you can just sit out and you have your coffee, no
Mm-hmm.
matter if it's winter time, you just get a blanket and just have your coffee and ride your bikes everywhere. And people just they don't care as long as you don't hit them. You just ride through the town, city center, and
Right.
it's just a perfect environment. Just love
Yeah.
it. But look, let me show you this. This is what I got right here.
Oh, hey,
There you go.
there we go. Thank you.
Crack this open. So
Well, hopefully enjoy it, and
uh,
hopefully if you get to that point where you find some stuff, be like, I think he made this up. I probably did. So just so yeah.
okay, well, and the same to you. It's like, if you read another try, if it looks like I made it up, well, just turn the next page and keep going. So
Yeah, and I don't with mine, I guess because I've read so much over the years, I don't get those kind of things don't typically, and maybe it's because I'm an expert in so few of things. I don't get down in the details. And I try to be careful with mine. It's one of the pieces of advice I had gotten early on through someone who was, fairly well up in the military ranks. And they said, look, with you just getting into writing, if you're going to write about a Secret Service agent or an FBI agent or someone in the military, and you're going to give a specific type of gun, you better get it right
yeah,
because
yeah,
you will get someone will write you a nasty gram, and if the book blows up and you become very very well known for that book, you might get lots of nasty grams of all the things, all the optics that was wrong, and the trigger pull weight, and all this other stuff, and they're like, just say he pulled a gun. You don't need to
right,
say he pulled a Glock 18 or 19 with laser sights and
yeah,
and I don't all that stuff. And there's some people that are like gun porn people. They love that stuff. They want to hear it. And I have a safe. I have a bunch of guns, and I like my guns. I don't care about them when I'm writing or when I'm reading. It to me, it's not like it's a tool. That's all it is a tool, and I don't get into the nitty-gritty of
I feel
having
the
it
same
all.
way. Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't want to. I do have some detail about a specific gun in particular in this one,
Mhm.
but it all kind of comes to head and with this particular gun, or let's call it a tool. But towards the end, of the book, it is a like I said, I wanted to entertain. So
Mhm.
if you like Jack Reacher or Elmore Leonard or
Mhm.
like a Tarantino movie, things, if you know where I'm going with this, it all kind of comes down to the end and you're going to be surprised. But it's like, yeah, if you like those guys, you're going to like this one. Bec- and based on this, well, I wouldn't say, I don't see, let's call it a tool. So,
I
but hopefully I
love it.
got it right. Yeah.
I'll look forward to either reading it or listening to it. The listening sounds actually really. I think I'll have to do the audiobook now. So
Well, the print versions are pretty good too. You can do both.
absolutely, you can do
Yeah,
you can do both. That is true. That is true. If I do audiobook, I have a better chance of getting through it quicker. In
yeah.
the sense of time frame, that's my biggest struggle now. Is I get a decent amount of books, like someone say, "Hey, read this" and all that, and I don't ever want to tell anyone no because so many people said yes to me. But it's just like trying to prioritize because I have a full-time job. I have kids half the time, so the kids are here. When the kids are here, my writing takes a back seat, and then so I try to cram all my writing stuff and marketing and podcasts and all that on days I don't have my kids or something else, and it's just like, and you have to be like laser focused. You have to just you have to be
Yeah.
really careful. So unfortunately, a lot of the reading stuff has become audiobooks because I can do that while I'm mowing the lawn or going in a car ride or whatever versus having to open the book. And the other thing too that I'm in a bad habit of is when I lay down at night or when I get ready to lay down at night, it's normally I've edited right before I'm getting ready to go to bed, so my eyes are already tired. And I have two books on my shelf next to me next to my bed. I sometimes get 3, 4 pages read and I'm falling asleep. So if I'm reading a book that way, sometimes that's going to be months of reading a book at 2 or 3 pages.
Eric,
It doesn't work.
yeah. Well, Eric, do you do print books or do you ebooks? Yeah, I
I
can't
was
do
I
ebooks, but
was very much against ebooks until I realized that was like a large portion of the sales I was getting for my
yeah,
own books.
yeah. I like to hold something in my hands, and
Yeah.
that's why I got your book. It just, there's just something.
That's
Yeah,
only part of my shelf. The rest of them are sitting over there. I've got more in my bedroom. So yeah, I'm definitely a print guy as I
yeah,
definitely like to get a copy in print, but I've definitely moved over now where I do start listening to a lot of books on audiobook. And then yeah, ebook. I've had to do a lot of ebooks. A lot of the times I'll get books from folks too are before they're actually printed or before they've got the covers. So I'll get a lot of ebook files sent to me. So it's just it's the nature of
yeah.
trying to read through them. So it's not my favorite way to do a book is the ebook, but it's again for my own sales, it's by far what I sell the most of for myself.
Okay, yeah, yeah. A lot of
So I
people
have
do.
to be a fan of them.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, hey, before we end it and telling everyone where they can go to get another try, my last question to my guests is typically the same. So I think you'd agree with me as an author that life is like a book. We have a first page,
Oh, we do.
we have a last page. It's a blessing that we don't know how many pages are in between there. But, Gene, as a writer, you get to write your last page. What does that last page say?
My last page would say, um, I would say I'm looking up at my family and just saying, you guys made it all the better. Thanks for showing up. That's what I would say.
Love it. Love it. In the end, all that stuff we collect, even all the books we collect and all that, what really matters more than our family and our faith? I just I don't
Well,
see I don't see a lot of things being as important. And I don't think people at the end are going to be like, Man, I wish I had such and such. No, it's probably going to say, I wish I had more time to spend with my kids or my spouse or my parents or whoever is, they're important in your life.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a little over the 50 zone that you're about to reach, and
It's just a number. It's okay.
but I've got three grandsons now.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
I'm going to make a shout out to Ember, Merritt, and Charlie, and they're from ages 5 on down,
Okay.
and it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
So and uh, I wrote this book for my son. Like I said, used to I
Hmm.
want to write a story that he'd get into, that he'd enjoy. Like, so,
Yeah.
hey, remember when we went back? Remember when we went to those action movies and we had
Hmm.
the popcorn and every weekend or so, we would go to these movies. And so I had him, what's he gonna like?
Yeah.
So now that he's got a son, it's sort of like, and I actually dedicated it to Merritt, uh, to my dad and grandson because
Mm.
they're named Merritt. So,
Lovely. So where can everyone go to get a copy of Another Try?
well, they can order it just about anywhere. The audiobook is available about around anywhere.
Hmm.
But it's you can get the book at your local bookstore. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it Barnes and Noble. It's in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobooks. So it's available if you want to read it. If you
Awesome.
know. So
Well,
and
give.
just wanted to say also, if you look on the back, I got a very nice blurb from Jeffrey Deaver and Meg Gardner and a
Mhm.
local author, Warren Easley, who also does. He's got his own like 10 books out now, and he's a terrific guy in the kind of a Michael Conley sort of.
Okay.
So these guys all helped me out along the way, and
Yeah.
I'm all the better for it.
Yeah, I met Meg years ago back in New York at Thriller Fest. I had her on the podcast last summer.
Right.
And again, someone that's super encouraging and
Well,
so many authors are like that.
Well, to get a blurb from her was like, she doesn't give too many out, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, ooh, boy, I just, thank you.
That's
So
all you
much.
can say. That's all you can say is thank you. And, one day when someone asks you for a blurb, you'll get that privilege of doing it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to do as much for the other people that they've done for me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you, Gene.
I love the author community.
I agree, 100%. Well, everyone, give Another Try a try and get a
Thank
copy.
you, Eric. And I'm going to go crack open the Body Man right about now.
Okay. Well, thanks, Gene. I appreciate you coming on.
Okay, thank you.